Hey, everybody. Welcome to Ask the Experts About Dahlias. This is today's webinar on this topic. We have four wonderful panelists that I am going to introduce in just a second. First, I'm Diane Blazek. I'm the Executive Director of National Garden Bureau, the host and sponsor of this webinar. I also have with me Gail from our office. She's behind the scenes and she's going to be posting a lot of wonderful links and other information in the chat. Speaking of the chat, you can ask your questions there. You can ask them in the Q&A. We will do our best to monitor both. And with that, I want to introduce our wonderful panelists. I'm just going to quickly name all four, and then I'm going to call on each one of you, and if you can do a quick introduction of yourself and your company. So looking across our screen, I have Arnisha from Doom and Orange. I have Allison from well, no, not from Inza. You are from Taki Europe or Sahin. Sorry about that. And Allison, you are from Syngenta Flowers. And Brent, you are from Brent and Becky's Bulbs. And look at this, we have 3 A's and a B. So we are really starting the alphabet off right today. Okay, Arnisha, tell us about yourself and your company.
Sure. Hello, everyone. So my name is Arnisha Jackson. I'm the product manager for specialty annuals within Doom and Orange. The specialty annuals, there's multiple categories, but Dahlias is one of them. I started with Doom it'll almost be 2 years in June. So excited to be here, and hopefully we can share some tips with you. Doom and Orange, we are based in North America in Columbus, Ohio. We do have offices across the seas, and we have farms basically all over to help provide product to the end consumer.
Excellent. And Allison Zeeb, you're next.
Cool. Hi, I'm Allison Zeeb. I work for Sahin. We're a company that's based in actually the Netherlands. I'm the account and product manager for them. I'm actually based in Chicago, so I'm the only one for North America. I've been with the company for almost 3 years now. I used to work for their sister company, Taki, in California, so you might have seen them around. But Sahin is special because we breed flower and vegetable varieties from seeds specifically just for home gardeners. So it's great to be on.
Thank you. And our next Allison, you guys spell it differently, sounds the same, but okay.
Yeah, always different. So my name's Allison. I am currently the head of marketing for the Americas region for Syngenta Flowers. And we're a global flower breeding company. So we have a whole team of people who support our breeders that breed new varieties of flowers, including the dahlias that we'll talk about today. So we're a global company, so we have some offices and locations in North America, California, and the Chicagoland area, but we also have breeding facilities in the Netherlands and all over the world. So I've been with Syngenta for coming up on 9 years in exactly a month. And it's been fun in this marketing role, but then also in like technical roles prior to this, and also our cut flower specialist. So excited to talk about dahlias as cuts today too.
Awesome. And I have to brag, Allison is also serving as the president of our organization. She just saw us through a merger. So she is leading us on to bigger and better things over the next year when she finally gets a little relief and the next president comes on. So thank you for that, Allison. And Brent, welcome back. I think it's been about a year since you've been on one of our webinars. So we're very happy to have you back. An icon in the bulb industry, I must say. We're very pleased to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your company?
Well, Diane, thank you. I'm delighted to be with you today. I'm part of a 4th generation mail order flower bulb business called Brent and Becky's Bulbs. Our bulbs go to public gardens around the country, to landscape designs, and our largest group of customers are home gardeners, discerning home gardeners who want quality. So I'm blessed. Jay is behind the scenes making this happen for me. All I have to do is be here and talk. He is the fourth generation part of our business. And my job at the business now is to answer customers' horticultural questions. This is my office these days. I can be playing in my garden. So many people mistakenly say they work in their gardens. They don't work at golf or tennis or cards. We need to get them out to play in their gardens, but I answer their horticultural questions while playing in my garden. So I'm delighted to be here. And I've been growing dahlias in my garden for, 15 years or so.
Awesome. I like that. We are not working in our gardens, we're playing in our
You need to
garden.
get that across. You don't work at golf or tennis or cards, so you need to play in your garden.
I love it. Okay, that's my new motto. I'm never working, I'm always playing. So tell you what, let's start this off, and I think each one of you can contribute to this question because there are many different types of dahlias. But before we're doing that, which I think Allison did a great slide in her presentation that we're going to show, let's talk about, I guess we should say, the method of propagation. So let's see here. Who wants to talk about seed propagation first, and then we'll do like some vegetative propagation, and then we'll do the actual tuber discussion. So who wants to talk about seed? I see two of you here that work with seeds.
I do work with seed. We're the seed-based company. So all our dahlias are from seed instead of tubers or cuttings or roots or anything like that. And we get our seeds, I guess is the question, from when the dahlia flower blooms, and then the flower will go to seed, and that's how we collect our seeds for the dahlias.
Awesome. I like that answer. Allison, you want to add anything to the seed discussion?
Yeah, no, and it's dahlias from seed are actually really interesting because, I mean, if you buy, seed from, seed packet companies that sell dahlias, that sell dahlia seed, like we offer a couple different varieties of seeds propagated from dahlias. So you'll find a lot of like predictable variability within ones where you buy the seed. They're not going to be exactly like the same flower like from plant to plant when you
That's the best part about seed. Yeah.
I mean, and that's fun. It's especially for the home gardeners, and then also when you collect your own seed, you'll find you're going to get a lot of different. The seed's not going to be like true. It's not going to come true from a dahlia because there's a lot of open pollination and crossing and stuff. So you'll pull a lot of that diversity that dahlias are really known for from seed propagated materials.
Great. Okay. And then Allison, same Allison, and Arnisha, you two can talk about the vegetatively propagated type of dahlias.
Yeah, I can go first. So we solely offer cuttings, unrooted cuttings that you can propagate. For North America, they would come out of Guatemala. So yeah, we ship, basically into brokers and into IGCs. And there's many different types of dahlias for unrooted that you can get as well. There's more compact, there's medium, there's more vigorous, there's smaller flowers, there's an open pollinated flower, and very large flowers, which are my favorite.
Yeah, and there's a lot of so a lot of the product, like if you're going through your garden centers in your area, will either be from a vegetatively propagated source or from a tuber. And with the vegetative propagation, so kind of the not the opposite, but compared to seed propagated from a vegetative cutting, it's going to be the same plant in each time. It's going to be the same flower, same form. So like that's how you get more uniformity and predictability from what you're growing. So, if you have a dahlia in your garden, maybe you started from seed and it's really amazing. You can take a cutting of that and root it, which you can do pretty easily with just some rooting hormone and a nice, like warm, moist environment just to get the roots on it. It's actually pretty easy to do. And that will maintain that particular, flower form or whatever you really liked by propagating it that way. So that's often, what you see when you go out to your garden centers. They'll be from vegetative propagation because it's nice and predictable and the same thing. And yeah, just predictable product.
Excellent. Okay, and Brent, let's talk about dahlias from tubers.
And dahlias from tubers, all of ours are tubers that were propagated in the Netherlands from cuttings from sprouting tubers. They're propagated this spring. I was just in Holland and went to one of our breeders. And I don't know if Becky sent you the pictures of the process of taking the tubers and sprouting them under controlled conditions. So you get lots of sprouts, taking them off with a piece of the base and rooting them in soil blocks and growing them on that this year into tubers, which are harvested in the fall and stored over the winter and then shipped to us in climate controlled containers. And we ship them out this time of the year to gardeners who can then plant them in. And dahlias are relatively cool soil tolerant, so they work well in most of the country.
Awesome, very interesting. I thought it was a longer process than one growing season to get the tubers, but it sounds like basically it would be one growing season.
Just one growing season. They make a nice cluster of tubers on a central stem from whence comes the new growth.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. Thank you to all of you for talking about the many different types of dahlias. Again, it shows the diversity and the different types we have. So there's something for everyone. And with that, I think, Allison, we're going to go to you and you can start off our presentation with the different dahlia flower types. And then we'll just go through varieties from each one of our panelists.
Cool. Yeah. And one of the things that's really awesome about dahlias is their diversity. So you could almost, look at all of these and, maybe even think that some of them aren't dahlias because they are so unique. And this list isn't even the full list of the different flower forms of dahlias. It's just kind of a collection of some of the main ones. But there's differences in the flower types and then also like the foliage colors. So there's lots of options and things to consider for dahlias. The single flowered types, kind of come in there first, which is it's just the single is just referring to how many like rows of petals it has. So it just has one row of petals. And usually these types are really floriferous. So there's, tons of flowers on the whole plant, but just a single row of petals. Semi-double refers to there being kind of like a couple rows and a half kind of thing. It's not fully double like the next photo or even the decorative one, but it kind of has a row and then a little bit. So like that one there in the middle has kind of a different form of a petal in that the yellow part of it. That's not a bicolor pattern on the petal. That's like another set of petals in there. And then double just means it's a full blooming flower. And then there's decorative is pretty similar. And we kind of go into more of the flower forms that are used to describe more like the cut flower types. So informal decorative is kind of that nice poof double flower, but the petals are sometimes a little more, how do you describe it? Like romantic or wavy, or I'm sure someone else might have a better description for that on here. But it's decorative, but in an informal way, which cafe au lait, which is one of the a dahlia that's known by name by brides, is informal decorative. And the cactus types with like the rolled petals, and then the water lily types that tend to curve their petals up and look kind of like a lotus flower. So lots of different flower types and dahlias.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, let's go on then to a few of the flower colors available in dahlias.
Yeah, and this is just, I mean, the dahlia world is so diverse. So this is just a very small segment of what is available there. But there's a rainbow of colors, you know, red, orange, yellow, blue, purple, and that's horticultural blue, by the way, not actual like blue. And then white and bicolors and, you know, all the shades of them in between. So yeah, it's a very diverse group of plants. And then this goes into some of the varieties that we offer from Syngenta flowers that you might see out there in your garden centers. To purchase. So we have our Sincerity Dahlia. So this is one of those like fully decorative, big flowers for us with this bicolor pattern. That's super cute. That photo there shows like how big these flowers can get compared to someone's hand. This was a winner for us for an industry award that we got back in 2019 when we launched it. There's also different vigor classes to consider with dahlias as well. And you know, there's more like compact ones that are for front of the border plantings, ones that are more vigorous for kind of, you know, showcase in your garden, and then the cut flower types, which are very vigorous and tall and, you know, and meant for cutting the stems. This variety for us is more in that like vigorous, well-branched kind of middle of your garden planting. And you can also cut these as cut flowers to bring into your home too. And then we have these single flowered types that you'll see labeled as Happy Days. And these are, you know, offered from unrooted cuttings, but also commonly from tubers as well. So you'll kind of see them in as like finished plants in your garden center, but also offered as tubers. And these are fun because they have a dark foliage on them. So there's, you know, green foliages and like these super dark foliages. And we love Happy Days for that dark foliage that makes the colors really pop on it in your landscape. So it's got that contrast for more like visual interest. And all of these are really good either in the ground or in containers as well. And then Dalagria is similar. You might recognize the name when you're out shopping, and has the dark foliage as well and a single flower. But these have a little bit more vigor to them than the last series does, and great powdery mildew tolerance too, which is also a good thing to know when you're out there buying dahlias. And then the cut flower types, this is my favorite. I love cut flowers and love being able to put plants into my garden that I can cut and bring inside too, so I can enjoy them while I'm inside or outside, especially when like mosquito season and the humidity starts around here. I like to see them inside too. So you know, if you see the name Karma on any varieties, those ones are going to have a lot of vigor and be able to be cut and brought into your home. And actually, the little call out, that Karma Caroline there, that's a new introduction that we launched this year, and it's named after my daughter. So that's one of my favorites. So if you see it out there, it's a really, really phenomenal variety.
One of the joys of working in the industry is you can have varieties named for special people in your life.
Yes.
That's awesome. Okay, thank you, Allison. And with this, I believe, Brent, it is your turn to talk about some varieties.
And this one is a lovely white and red striped, probably a decorative. I don't know that for sure, but it was great in our garden. And this one will be wonderful. Dahlias in our climate, zone 7B or 8A, actually bloom well they've started in April, they'll bloom well in May and into June. In the heat of July and August, they tend to taper off. When the nights begin to cool again in September, October, They're wonderful. So I would pair this one with a perennial called Agastache Blue Fortune for a nice red, white, and blue display in the garden. We also find that dahlias are cut and come again. They are great cut flowers. And if you don't take the old flowers off, they think they've done their job of making seeds and hence stop blooming. So we encourage people to cut off the old flowers and have them bloom again.
Great tip. Thank you.
This one, I love the dark ones as well, the dark foliage. It makes the flowers pop, and they're fairly compact plants. Now, this one is amazing. We do a planting at our church, making a joyful sight unto the Lord. And this one has come back in the flower beds. Now, they bloom in sequence. We do spring flowering bulbs early, and then we have dahlias and other perennials following. So we always have some color in the beds. We even do lasagna type plantings. These can go right on top of spring flowering bulbs, which are then dormant. They help keep the bulbs dry in their summer dormancy. But this one, it's a blooming trick. It just keeps on blooming, and it's come back for 3 years in a good compost bed. Dahlias do like good drainage, particularly in their dormancy. So we find this one has been superb and coming back year after year. This one is a dahlia produced in France, in Europe, and they call them bush dahlias. They're very floriferous, very strong stemmed, and again, in our season, great in May and in June, tapers off July and August, but keep it deadheaded and it'll bloom right up until frost. Also, these single flowered dahlias have the virtue of having good pollen and possibly some nectar. I don't know about that. But as the monarchs migrate in the autumn, they are drawn to these single flowered dahlias as a food source on their way south to overwinter.
And Brent, you said this one is kind of looks like a bush. What height does this one get to be?
I think I remember it's 2 to 3 feet typically.
I was going to guess that. Okay, based on the picture. Great, thank you.
Now, these are not my favorites, except for this one of them, because the flowers are so big. These are dinner plate dahlias. They're so damn big, they get floppy and fall over. The stems, we wish they were stronger. If you need to, instead of staking, we would recommend caging these in a peony cage or a tomato cage, something like that. Nice if it's green and it doesn't look like it's being supported by a corset or something. In any event, we love this one. It's very rich flowering, not quite as big as the other dinner plates, but a favorite here for us, and is a good cut flower as well. Now, you've already talked about the karmas. The karmas are the cut flower dahlias, and they're amazing. And in Becky's fall garden, this one just jumps out. Now, yellow is the first color your eye separates from the spectrum. So this is a 55-mile-an-hour color. If you live along a street, plant this one out and everybody will get caught and stop and see the rest of your flowers. Strong stems, long-lasting flowers, excellent. Now, I sent you some pictures or I think Becky sent you some pictures of one of our dahlia breeders in the Netherlands. He particularly likes dark foliage, so he's been selecting, but instead of throwing away all the ones he doesn't select, he makes a mixture of them, and it's pretty awesome. It's the first year we've offered it, but we think it will be a kaleidoscope of color in the garden. These are all single flowered dahlias, and they are compact in nature, but that wonderful dark, shiny black foliage, that's a real selling point, real focal point in the garden.
That's another one. If you're driving by at 55 miles per hour, that's going to make you stop if you see that.
It will indeed.
Yes, it will. All right. Okay, thank you so much, Brent. And now, Arnisha, we are on to yours.
Okay, thank you. So, talking about the huge blooms, the XXL, this is Veracruz, the name says it all. So huge blooms, more vigorous plant. These can also be a cut flower as well. So the XXLs, there's many different types of colors we have. You know, we have the red and the more popular yellow. Bicolors are probably my favorite, just the ones that are different. Some have, you know, different striping in them, or they're kind of speckled. So it just kind of depends. There's just a good variation of dahlias in this category. Okay, so we kind of started from the biggest and we're going to our smallest that we offer. So this is the novations. So these are going to be for your, like a 6-inch container, up to an 8-inch. So these will be great for like border edging in your landscape. So these have terrific branching, therefore you see tons of flower power on these. And again, novations, a great lineup of colors, bicolors as well. Okay, Temptation. So this one has the dark foliage. A lot of people love the dark foliage. These are going to be a little bit more vigorous. Then we also have a line called Hypnotica. So these are a little bit more vigorous than Hypnotica. And like, you know, as one of you said earlier, deadheading really helps them, you know, just keep forcing more blooms. Okay, then we have Raspberry Ice. This is a mega boom variety. So the mega booms, the flowers are very large, like that of the XXL, but the flowers sit right on top of the foliage. So if you don't want a very tall flower, more of a shorter stem, you can go with XXLs. And I just love this Raspberry Ice color. Okay. So the Revelations, the series of 5 colors actually just came out for 2024. The salmon bicolor is just it's an outstanding plant. I love the color. You can pair it, you know, with a petunia, you put it in a nice combination and it just really draws the colors. You can, you know, add creeping Jenny to it. It just pairs really, really well in a combination. So the bicolor is kind of like a salmon, has a, the center is like a salmon color and the outer petals is a coral. And it's an open bloom, so it's a single bloom. Great pollinator, you know, the bees, you know, they just come, you know, they just attract them. So another great thing about Revelations is I have had these, you know, planted in full sun. And say like you got it at a garden center, was it where it wasn't in full sun and it had like, you know, like a green foliage. Well, once planted in the full sun, there was, you know, it turns darker foliage. So there was a petal that actually fell off one of the flowers and it was laying on one of the leaves. And I picked it up and you could see the outline of the darker foliage where the petal had fallen. So pretty cool. I do love the color contrast with that darker foliage in the full sun. So that's great about
it's a beauty. It is a beauty. And I noticed that Gail put a link in there. And then ironically, the last one for you, Arnisha, is very self-descriptive. It's called candy corn. We all know what candy corn looks like in the colors. So you go ahead and tell us about Hypnotica candy corn.
Yes. So Hypnoticas have, you know, an upright habit. They're going to be a little bit smaller than your XXLs. Still tons of flower power. So the candy corn, like she said, you know, a lot of people love or hate the candy, but when I saw this flower color, I had to name it candy corn. So it's, you know, got 3 colors on it and it's just a fantastic novelty dahlia.
Okay, Allison, let's try doing this. You have a dwarf with cactus flowers,
Mhm.
and it is a field-grown mix.
Nice.
So tell us about all the colors here.
Sure. Okay. Imagine dwarf plant in the garden. It could be used for pods and like border plants because it's not going to get very tall. It has green leaves and the flowers sit right on top of the leaves. They look like almost starfish, like you would see in Arizona on top of cactuses, hence the cactus flowered flower. And a field grown mix just means you're going to have multiple colors. So there's comes in ranges of like purple, orange, yellow, red, all seed grown. So everything that I have for plants, you get in like packets. So you would buy from Home Depot, Lowe's, anywhere you would buy your packets from any company, you could find dahlia seeds. And if you start them in the spring, I started mine, 4 weeks ago, and they're just sprouting up now to be planted in my garden this summer. So this is a good way, instead of just tubers, hey, I started this dahlia from seed. And that's my little tiny dwarf starfished flower. Cactus.
Awesome. That's a very good description. I'm sitting here looking at the picture. So very good description. And then the next one is called an improved field grown mix. And this one, you really have to describe the colors on these flower petals.
Okay. Still imagine your little dwarf plant, potted plant, green leaves, and the flowers, it's like you take a daisy, a small daisy, and then you stuck a larger upside down daisy around it. So the inside's like is white petals with the yellow center, and the outside comes in different colors. So it's like pinks and reds and orange. And you'll hear field grown mix, and that just means we grew a whole field of these dahlias. And then when they all went to seed, we collected all the seed and are packaging them. So we don't decide what percentage of colors are in the mix. It's just whatever was in the field. That's our field grown mix. So you can kind of get every color inside these dahlias.
You know, you could call that Mother Nature's mix because it's what Mother Nature.
I like that. Yeah, actually, I'm going to write that down. That's a phenomenal name.
Okay. Now, this one I know quite well because we've had it in the AS trials before as a comparison. So it's called Bishop's Children.
Yes. So Bishop's Children was in the UK. So it was a nice English variety of dahlia. It's a dark leaved, and I know we've seen a lot of dark leaf dahlias, so you got that in mind. But it's interesting when a seed variety is dark leaved because it's harder to keep that dark leaf when you keep collecting seeds from each plant. So it's like, oh man, it's a dark leaf dahlia. That's awesome. So it's dark leafed, and the flowers are a range of orange and reds that are single flowers that sit on it. So you get a dark stem, orange and red flowers on a dark leaf plant.
Another excellent description. Okay. Now this one is not available yet, but I understand that it will be available for next year's growing season, gardening season, play season, according to Brent. And it is called Black Forest Ruby. So tell us about that one.
Right. So we have a new whole series of Black Forests that are coming out, and it's a new dahlia for us. It's a dark leaf seed raised, and it's different than Bishop's Children. I know I described, it's red with a dark leaf, but the Black Forest is actually almost like a stop sign red. It's so bright of a red against a really dark leaf that you can see it quite a distance away in the garden. It's almost like Brent's photo where he had all those flowers with the different colors and the dark leaf. It's like that, but a bright red stop sign red. So that's our Ruby. And it's really nice because instead of just a single flower, it's multiple, it's a double flower. So you get kind of a range of more double than just a daisy-like petal.
So let's see here. I think we've already covered the whole perennial annualness of them. And then several of you had talked about when they bloom. And I think Brent was talking about more in a little bit in the beginning of the summer and late in the summer with cool season. Can you talk a little bit more about this as far as regionality? If you're in the far north, can it be pretty much all summer? Any tips for gardeners, players in the south versus north, that kind of thing?
Commonly, you'll buy them like if you buy a finished plant from a garden center, they'll have been forced in a greenhouse to flower at that time, and then you plant it and some of them will depending on how heat tolerant they are, some of them will keep flowering through the summer and then kind of resurge and like flower in the fall when the temperatures get cooler and the day lengths start to get shorter. So dahlias like it on the cooler side. Short days is typically what triggers their flowering response. So kind of on a biological level for dahlias, but they'll flower under the long days through the summer too, as long as it's not, too hot for that particular variety. So if you live in a really warm area, like looking for varieties that have some tolerance on the label, especially like, I don't know, south of North Carolina, would y'all agree? Like they need some heat tolerance. It can be a struggle, especially in Florida, to grow dahlias where it's really hot and humid. Yeah, typically you'll see kind of a spring flush and then a big fall flush of flowers too, but they'll peter along through the summer as well.
Possibility in a northern climate, if you want to get flowers when it's still much cooler, start them inside in pots. Use bottom heat, 70-degree heat mat, and you can get plants that are ready to put out when no longer danger of frost and it's cool. And you can get a nice flush during May. You can extend your season a bit.
Okay, that's an excellent segue, Brent. So I'm going to go back to you and then to Allison Z with this question. What is a typical time to bloom when planting a tuber? So you had said if you started them indoors, how many days or months would it be until they're blooming? And then Allison Z, I'm going to ask you the same question about seed.
So you're asking me that question?
Yes, about tubers. If I planted my tuber on March 1st, when would it be blooming?
And I think that has to do with the cultivar, but it also typically, if it has that bottom heat, which is what encourages it to start growing and vegetatively, what'll set the flowers, that I understand, and I don't know enough about this. Maybe it's a day length thing, but I would say 2 months, generally 6 weeks to 2 months. I think you could have it in bloom.
Okay.
I hope I'm correct with that.
Yeah, I agree with Brent that it'll depend on the variety, but yeah, probably I'd say like 2 to 3 months.
Excellent. Okay, and Allison, seed then?
We usually recommend it's 100 to 120 days, which comes out to what, 30 days in a month-ish.
Yeah.
So
3 to 4.
3-4 months. Yeah, because you're gonna, instead of having it all that energy in that tuber or that cutting already started, it has to start from a tiny seed, so it takes longer to bloom.
Makes sense. Yeah. And do you recommend bottom heat for that as well? For starting seeds?
That'll definitely help if you bottom heat, because you get that extra energy that started. I personally, like this year, I'm starting dahlias from seed and I didn't bottom heat, and it took them about 2 weeks to really get themselves started and growing. So the bottom heat will just make it a shorter time frame.
Excellent. Okay, so I've got another question here that anybody can answer. I had Linda, she says, I had one dahlia. She must have loved that one dahlia. She had it in a pot and brought it in over the winter in a basement, cut the foliage down. About a month ago, it began growing, but unfortunately no light, so it's really leggy. It's not warm enough to put it outside. So can I cut the leggy sprouts off and root them? Or if she cuts the leggy sprouts off, will they reflush? Would be my additional question. So
yeah, I would say, I mean, without seeing the plant, but kind of envisioning it, you probably could cut off the leggy sprouts and root them, but get them in an area where there is good light for like from your windows, or if you have a light to put them under, because that's going to help them like photosynthesize and have energy to root. So that's going to be really important for that. But also when you cut off those leggy sprouts, make sure you leave a node, like a leaf pair or two, so that way it'll keep growing from that tuber that you have too. So you won't delay that tuber either.
Yes, Brent.
a grow light about a foot above will help keep it nice and compact. And a grow light is an LED. Typically, they used to make them in fluorescent, but it's a cool source of light. And that, when we're forcing spring flowering bulbs, that keeps them nice and compact, but it needs to be relatively close to them. The ceiling light is not enough. It loses too many foot candles.
Right, yeah. Let's see here. I think I heard one of you talk about this, and it's also an opportunity to talk about some of the new breeding, but these big flowered dahlias may not be able to hold their weight because their blooms are so large. And Brent, I heard you say that you would recommend like a peony cage for
Yes.
these larger dahlias. And then I'm assuming everybody with some of your new breeding work and selection work that you're doing, you really are looking for stronger stems, no matter if it's in the garden or cut flowers, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
because it's hard. It's so sad when it breaks off, especially in the wind. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
when you bring them in as cut flowers, right?
right. Yeah, so for the ones that are bred specifically for cut flowers though, like those karmas, like they're bred for stem length. So for those, it's likely that you'll need some sort of netting just to be able to support them because they were bred for that. But you'll notice in some of the language for the new varieties of what we're breeding, we'll say like well branched. And they'll have big flowers like what Arnisha showed, but they'll be well branched, so it can actually hold up those big flowers. So you want to look for things like that, because that's something that we're absolutely selecting for and like paying attention to, as we as plant breeders are breeding new varieties.
Okay, and here's another question. I have a feeling the answer might be this variety is more compact, but somebody is saying my potted dahlias don't seem to grow very large, even when I put them in large containers. Any tips for success when growing in containers? So A, if you don't want compact, don't select compact varieties, which they may or may not be labeled as such when you're buying them at retail. So go to the
Check the
NDB
back of the
website,
card.
you'll find out.
Yeah. But even the back of the card, you know how they come with those dahlias have those tiny labels and they'll show how much they grow for. But I know a lot of the times we're breeding for varieties for compactness in pots because people want it on their balconies or anything like that. So if you want something bigger, you just you need something that doesn't say pot and bedding in a bigger pot. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's why it's good to research your varieties, which being on this webinar, you're doing that. So, looking for things that have, vigorous or their dimensions are more like what you would want to see on the tags or in the variety information.
Yeah, a lot of times it'll provide the height and the spacing. Might even say, great for in the landscape or patio containers. Yep.
Okay, unfortunately, it sounds like they are not compact. So what might be a challenge when you have something in a container and it just isn't flourishing? What's happening? What is your recommendation on how she can make it grow larger and flourish more?
I would recommend planting it in the ground and adding fertilizer. Y'all can all chime in as well. Yeah. But it could just be the compactness.
Brent's been trying to say something. What do you?
I think a media makes a big difference. We use only compost-based media, and I think it makes a big difference holding moisture and nutrients and has available nutrients. And I think that makes a big difference. We grow every bulb that we sell on a pot. And so we have them on display for customers coming in. And they do really well in that compost media.
Yeah. Yeah. And so adding on to that, I agree with Brent, like it all comes down to the substrate and what's in your pot. So, if you feel like you've got a good substrate, making sure that you're feeding the dahlias because, you know, they need food just like we do. So, you know, giving them the proper fertilizer and light so that they can photosynthesize. So I would look at how much sunlight it's getting in a day. But then also with dahlias, sometimes things that will stunt their growth is if their roots aren't growing very well. So if you're overwatering them and then maybe it introduces some sort of disease to the roots, that will stunt the growth of a vigorous variety. So I would take a look at your like try to maybe dig around and like see what your roots are, or if it's not too large of a container, try to see how the root system is developing. You can like flip it upside down and pull the pot off and see what the roots are doing. I realize it might be a large container, so that may not be the best thing to do, but it could come down to your root quality. If you've got nice white roots that have like grown through the pot, then that's a good thing. But if they're kind of brown and spindly, and that's an indicator of poor plant health.
Excellent. Okay, got a couple questions here about storage. So it sounds like this is going to be a tuber question, and I know you mentioned it a little bit when I was off and on, so I might have missed it. But if you can just reiterate a little bit about best tips for winter storage of tubers. Brent, I kind of think I'm tossing that one to you.
Okay. And again, I think it starts with when you dig them, be gentle, try not to bruise them, let them air dry with good air not in full sun, because the tubers may sunburn, and leave some soil on them. The soil they're growing in has lots of beneficial fungi that can help protect them from the bad fungi. So do not wash them. I read on the internet sometimes that say we never wash a bulb. The only bulbs that we are required, well, I have to take that back. We're required by USDA to wash our dahlias prior to shipping here. We then pack them in fin peat. We're required to wash our lilies. They're not damaged as easily. But when you wash a bulb, particularly with high pressure, you can bruise it, and that's a great place for the fungi to enter. The fusarium is typically the fungi that rot bulbs that can get access, and and then pack them in a media, either peat or, there's a lot of different ways you can pack them to store. And I think store them cool over the winter. Keep them from freezing, but store them cool.
So cool would be defined as maybe 40 to 50 degrees?
In that neighborhood, yes.
Okay, okay. And somebody said she had hers in cardboard boxes and they dried out and died.
Well, they need something to hold the moisture around the roots.
Okay, so hold the moisture, but not too much moisture. Hold the moisture,
That's right.
not too dry. Yeah, kind of practice will make perfect, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that is kind of a trial kind of thing to do, because there are like 99 ways that you could do it, all just kind of depending on what you have available to you and like what your climate's like. But it is a moisture balance and a temperature balance. So maybe finding that special corner in your garage where it happens to work, is just kind of what you need to troubleshoot to find.
I also find Becky gardens in the same zone I do, a mile away. She gardens on heavy gray mottled clay. Her dahlias rot during the winter. I garden on sandy loam. And my dahlias get enough drainage. They need to sleep in a dry bed. So if they stay wet in the winter, you may lose them. But if you can keep them dry in raised beds in Becky's garden where drainage is better, they do come back as well.
Yeah, I also find mine overwinter better if I have them in a nice like sunnier spot that gets the heat even in the cooler times. I'm in 7B in Northern Virginia. So I find that helps. Whereas if I have them in a shadier spot where they're not really getting so much light, then I don't really have success with them overwintering in the ground. But yeah, Brent's point about it being if the soil's well drained or not is really important, because if it's not, they're more likely to freeze because there's just more water sitting on them.
Are they also sun-loving plants? I don't grow any, I haven't tried them in the shade. Maybe they're shade tolerant, but I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
What about pests? What kind of pests or diseases? I've heard you talk about fusarium. What are common to dahlias, common issues, and how do you resolve those?
I had a Japanese beetle, especially in the north, issue with dahlias because they like with the double flowers burying into the tiny little holes. And the only way I can get rid of Japanese beetles is taking the bowl of soapy water and then pushing them into it. It's a sad death, but it's, or else they're just going to eat the petals away and then they'll eat everything else.
And if you have chickens, they'll love the Japanese beetles.
Exactly.
Feed to 'em.
Feed the chickens, yes. Any other pests that are really attracted to dahlias?
Thrips would be another one. You know, before, just at the farm, we do preventative sprays, just to, counter off that like in the beginning. So, but you can look for thrips. If your flowers are turning a little bit brown, they're kind of small, you can always take off a flower bed and like tap it on a piece of paper and you'll see some little, little thrip bugs crawling around. So I think so there's several, the sprays that you can also purchase, in the garden center that would help for that.
Somebody says that they have aphids. So
Yeah.
that another common problem, I'm assuming. She started them inside and has aphids.
Do you have indoor plants that have aphids then that carry it over maybe?
That's what it might sound like, yeah. Okay, we already talked about sun, I believe. We talked about that. We talked a little bit about the growing medium is very compost heavy. Somebody was asking about the proper soil pH for growing dahlias. Anybody else want to talk about what happens under the ground? What's the best mixture, pH levels, etc. for dahlias?
Yeah, I mean, pH wise, I mean, they don't really need anything particularly alkaline or particularly acidic, just a nice average, what is it, like 5.8 to 6.2
5,
kind
yeah.
of, yeah, pH. So it's nothing really that you would have to, manipulate particularly. Yeah, so they're pretty simple in that aspect, but I would say they're heavy feeders. So I would just make sure that like your fertilizer is balanced, but you won't need a special fertilizer for them either to be able to manipulate the pH.
Yes, Brent.
We think compost is the best mediator of all. You feed the biome of the soil and it provides everything the plants need. It buffers the pH. We use no chemicals at all in our gardens or in our operation. But
And so do
compost is
you,
it.
are you making your own compost or are you suggesting?
We do buy in yard waste compost from
Okay.
a local municipality. I
Excellent.
make in my own garden, I mix horse manure, leaves, and wood waste and make my own for my own garden.
Yeah. Very good. Okay. I know we went a little over, but because of my technical issues, it's okay. I like to close our webinars with a closing tip from each one of our panelists. And so I want you to think about what is your number one tip on growing dahlias. And let's hear, Brent, you are on my screen right now. So I'm going to put you on the spot first for your number one tip.
All righty. Dahlias are cut and come again. They're meant to be shared. Plant them, we can plant in relatively cool soil, get them started early, get a flush of bloom in May and June, and then keep them watered during the summer, but not overly. And then again, September, October, and November, If in November you're expecting a frost, put a light cover over them. Give them that little frost blanket and extend the season. Share your flowers with other people. Cut your flowers and give them away. And our motto is plant bulbs and harvest smiles.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And just to clarify, you're in zone 7B.
Well,
that is
sometimes they say 7B, they now saying zone 8.
Okay. Okay, great. Let's see here. Across my screen, Allison Carlson, you're next.
All right. So I think, I don't know, my biggest tip would be just explore the diversity of dahlias. Like, I think that's the fun part. I know we all like to, try to figure out how to overwinter stuff, and we don't necessarily want to, we want to utilize the perennial aspect of things, but also when things don't work out, it means we can go buy a new plant and try something else, so I would just embrace that and try the different flower forms and the different vigors and grow some as cut flowers and, bring them inside. So yeah, that's my tip.
I like that. Allison Zeeb, you're next up.
Sure. I like to take the first shoot of the flower of the dahlia. I like to take it off. And I know everybody's so excited for the first flower to come up, but you almost always get more multiple blooms to come up once that first one is gone. So if you want multiple, I always like to take the first one off and I'll put it in a vase or a small glass of water to watch it bloom by itself. But then you get multiple blooms to come up.
I love that also. Okay, I'm sorry. I got to go out to the garden right now. But Arnisha, I need your tip too. And that's really going to make me run out to the garden.
Okay. Well, great tips from everybody. Yeah, dahlias just make you happy. They make you smile. Let's see. I would say, if you are gonna take a pinch and take a leggy, sprout off, and if you do want to try to root it, it'll take, 3 to 4 weeks in a smaller cell. And then when you are ready to transplant it, it's got its roots and it's ready to grow. Don't be afraid to plant it deep. So that's my tip.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, so everybody, I really appreciate you hanging in there through some of our technical difficulties of me coming and going, and who knows? Maybe I was out gardening with my dahlias, playing with my dahlias during that point. We'll pretend, right? So thank you very, very much for all your expertise. It was wonderful. I mean, you're right. Dahlias bring a smile to your face, and it's a wonderful thing to talk about. So this has been the best hour of my week, I think, is talking about these beautiful dahlias. So Arnisha, Allison 1, Allison 2, and Brent, thank you for your time. And everybody have a great gardening season, and come on to social media and show us your dahlia pictures. Thank you so much.